The night sky above Manhattan burned with unnatural light, a fiery ripple that seemed to tear through reality itself. Pedestrians scattered like frightened ants as a deep, resonant hum filled the streets, vibrating through glass, asphalt, and bone alike. Somewhere, a car alarm shrieked, echoing off towering skyscrapers, but it was drowned beneath the roar of a presence far older and far darker than anything this city had ever known. A portal, twisting black as obsidian and rimmed with flames that licked the edges of reality, opened above Times Square. From its center, a figure emerged, descending in a shaft of burning light and hellish energy. His chains rattled against the fiery glow of his motorcycle, tires sparking embers as they met the concrete. Ghost Rider had arrived. His eyes, ablaze with otherworldly fire, swept over the neon chaos of the city. Times Square had never seen anything like him, a skeletal visage encased in a leather coat, scorched at the seams, chains coiling at his sides, and hellfire licking his body as if it were both armor and weapon. He was fully aware, fully powered, yet aware that this world was unlike any he had patrolled before. Dimensional interference, strange ambient energy, caused a faint instability in his flames, but it was negligible. He was nearly at 100%, and he knew it. Below, a soup, muscles straining and eyes glinting with unnatural light, leapt from a burning billboard, sending a bus crashing into a storefront. Civilians screamed, clutching children, diving behind cars, and pressing against street walls. The rider's chains lashed out automatically, his senses locking on the source of the chaos. In a single motion, a whip of hellfire snaked through the air, wrapping around the soup's torso and yanking him from the wreckage. He slammed against the ground, fire cascading across his body, and the soup cried out, not in anger, but in raw, instinctive fear. From the shadows of the surrounding streets, cameras clicked and surveillance drones activated. Vought's security operatives, alerted by the massive spike in unexplained energy, moved to intercept. They were armed with experimental tech designed specifically for neutralizing superhuman threats: electric pulse rifles, reinforced armor, and drones bristling with taser-like energy weapons. Yet even as they approached, Ghost Rider's presence alone radiated a threat so immense that even seasoned operatives hesitated. The rider didn't speak. He didn't need to. His skull, alight with ethereal fire, tilted slightly toward the crowd of terrified onlookers, then toward the soup, then to the approaching agents. Justice, or vengeance, depending on perspective, was the language he spoke, and it was universally understood. As the soup struggled beneath the chains, Ghost Rider considered the environment. Times Square, crowded with civilians, electric signs flaring from sparks, shattered glass reflecting the fire from his skull, and the faint smell of ozone mixing with scorched asphalt. Each detail sharpened his awareness, each sensory input feeding into the calculus of his next action. The human lives here were fragile, but the potential for collateral damage was enormous. He would need to be precise. The soup finally broke free, lunging blindly at the rider. With a flick of his wrist, a chain of pure hellfire wrapped around the attacker's ankle, yanking him off balance and sending him crashing into a metal scaffolding. Sparks and shards of concrete rained down, and a storefront window shattered. Ghost Rider's fiery eyes scanned for civilian casualties. None yet, but the danger was imminent. Above the chaos, something else stirred. In the high-rise office of a Vought tower, executives leaned over glowing screens, watching the unfolding scene with a mix of fascination and fear. Their language was clinical, detached, but the words cut through the city's chaos like a blade. "We need containment, now. Initiate Protocol Inferno." The rider sensed them, not through sight, but through the resonance of their intent. The hunger for control, the lust for power. He had faced men like these before in other worlds, though none had matched the calculated cruelty of Vought. They would not stop him, and he would not stop himself. Not yet. In the streets below, civilians began recording on smartphones, their screams punctuated by flashes of light as Ghost Rider's chains ensnared yet another fleeing soup. The portal above flickered, reminding him that his time here was temporary, that he was a visitor from Hell's own domain in a city that teetered on the edge of madness. He would not leave a path of unnecessary destruction, yet he would not shy from retribution. The moral calculus of vengeance weighed heavily, even on a spirit of hellfire. Civilians' lives were innocent, but Soup's crimes were not. Each act of punishment was a signal, a message. Power is meaningless without accountability, and the reckless would be judged, harshly, irrevocably. And so, the rider advanced. His chain whipped through the air with a hiss of fire, wrapping around a Vought drone sent to contain him. Sparks erupted as metal melted beneath the heat, and the drone fell like a fiery comet to the asphalt below. Civilians screamed, but no one was harmed. Precision, judgment, and raw power combined. He was a force of nature in the urban jungle, unbound by bureaucracy, morality as fluid as the hellfire that burned from his skull. From the skyscrapers above, a shadow moved, Billy Butcher, observing. He had heard the whispers of a new player in town, a ghost of vengeance, unlike anything he had ever seen. Butcher's eyes narrowed. This could be a weapon or a disaster. Either way, it demanded attention. The night roared around Ghost Rider, a symphony of panic, fire, and supernatural menace. Each movement carved a story into the concrete and neon of Manhattan, a tale of arrival, judgment, and the unyielding presence of hell in a world gone mad. And above it all, a voice echoed, not audible, but understood, almost spiritual. If you want to see more characters enter this world, hit that subscribe button and drop a character name in the comments. The city trembled. The rider's skull burned brighter. The game had begun.
The aftermath of Ghost Rider's first strike left Times Square in a state of chaotic awe. Civilians crouched behind overturned cars, phones raised, capturing every ember, every flash of hellfire, every metallic crash as the supernatural vigilante made his presence known. Smoke rose from a burned-out soup drone, the acrid scent of scorched concrete and ozone filling the air. This was not a mere street brawl, it was a spectacle that blurred the lines between urban disaster and mythic retribution. Ghost Rider didn't linger. He moved through the city with purpose, tires of his fiery motorcycle hissing against the asphalt, chains rattling like a chorus of judgment. His senses probed every shadow, every alleyway, searching for the source of corruption, the soups whose unchecked power had made this world a breeding ground for violence and fear. Each flicker of movement, each heartbeat registered on him like a map of sin and reckoning. Meanwhile, the corporate gears of Vought had begun to grind in earnest. From their high-rise observation decks, executives monitored every angle of the chaos. "Contain him," one barked, her voice clinical and cold. "Neutralize the threat. The world is watching. Public exposure is unacceptable." The operatives deployed advanced tracking drones, some armed with experimental weapons designed to harness electrical energy, others equipped with reinforced containment coils laced with a polymer meant to immobilize superhuman entities. Ghost Rider's presence triggered alarms, his hellfire signature unlike anything the technicians had cataloged. But Ghost Rider was not merely reactive, he calculated, anticipated, and executed with precision. A squad of armed operatives emerged from a side street, rifles trained on him. Sparks danced along the edges of their experimental weaponry as they fired, electrical pulses arcing toward him. Ghost Rider's chain intercepted them, mid-air, absorbing the energy and redirecting it into the pavement. Concrete fractured, sparks flew, and the operative stumbled back, momentarily blinded by the reflected hellfire. The first direct confrontation was inevitable. A soup, larger than the others and clearly enhanced beyond natural limits, charged from an alleyway. He was a grotesque mix of muscle and augmented armor, a product of Vought's cutting-edge enhancement programs.
Ghost Rider didn't hesitate. His chain, alight with flames from the netherworld, coiled around the Soup's torso and yanked him off balance, sending him crashing into a nearby lamppost. The Soup's roar echoed across the city, a mixture of anger, fear, and disbelief. From the rooftops, Billy Butcher observed the spectacle. He had anticipated Soups with conventional powers, but this was something else entirely. He gestured to his team, eyes sharp. Watch, learn, and don't get in his way unless we can profit off it. That thing's not playing by any rules we know. Huey and Frenchie exchanged uneasy glances, but both understood the implicit truth. Ghost Rider was both a threat and an opportunity. The city around them reacted as well. Traffic screeched to a halt, neon signs flickered in panic, and sirens wailed as emergency services struggled to maintain order. The rider's arrival had become an event, one that blurred the lines between urban legend and living nightmare. Civilians, while terrified, couldn't tear their eyes away. The juxtaposition of raw supernatural power against the backdrop of a corrupt modern city created a scene that was simultaneously terrifying and mesmerizing.
Ghost Rider's path led him toward an abandoned warehouse district, the epicenter of a Soup crime ring that had been operating under Vought's blind eye. Here, the supernatural met the criminal underworld. Dim alleys, flickering street lamps, and rusted metal created a setting ripe for confrontation. The scent of oil, decay, and lingering ozone hung in the air, a sensory tapestry marking the presence of sin and violence. Inside the warehouse, Ghost Rider confronted a group of enhanced criminals, Soups who trafficked in fear and brutality. They were armed, augmented, and reckless, a perfect storm of antagonism. The rider's chain whistled through the air, each strike precise, devastating, and controlled. He moved with a fluidity that belied his skeletal form, chains wrapping around limbs, yanking weapons from hands and immobilizing foes in bursts of hellfire. Not a single blow was wasted. Every action demonstrated not only his supernatural might, but strategic intelligence honed over countless battles across dimensions. As the dust settled, one Soup remained, bleeding and desperate, their augmented eyes wild with fear. Ghost Rider hovered above, chains coiled like serpents ready to strike. "Justice is not mercy," his ethereal voice echoed in the empty warehouse, reverberating off metal and concrete alike. The Soup's decision, to surrender, to flee, or to fight, was irrelevant. The rider's judgment was absolute, yet deliberate, balancing retribution with the preservation of innocent life, even in this morally gray underworld. Meanwhile, Vought's high command intensified their observation. "We underestimated him," one technician admitted, eyes glued to the live feed. "He's not just powerful, he's intelligent, adaptive, he's dangerous." Plans for containment shifted toward neutralization, with more aggressive tactics authorized. Ghost Rider had painted a target on himself, and the corporate machinery began to grind its teeth in preparation for a battle it might not survive. As the night deepened, the rider paused atop a warehouse, observing the sprawling city below. Fires burned in the distance, sirens continued to wail, and the faint hum of drones echoed against the concrete canyon of Manhattan. He sensed the moral undercurrents of the city: fear, corruption, greed, desperation. Every choice he had made, every strike, had been a test of judgment, a balancing act between vengeance and restraint. And somewhere in the shadows, Billy Butcher and the boys made their move, slipping closer, eyes narrowed, minds calculating. Ghost Rider had arrived, full power blazing, in a city that was both ripe for punishment and oblivious to the storm that had landed in its streets. The collision of worlds, morals, and powers was only beginning. The first full-scale engagement was unavoidable. Ghost Rider's presence had drawn not just the attention of rogue Soups and criminal underworld factions, but also the all-seeing corporate eyes of Vought. Drones buzzed through the night air, scanning for heat signatures and hellfire emissions alike. Experimental containment units, designed specifically for enhanced beings, were deployed on the streets below, each one crackling with energy fields that could immobilize even the strongest human. But Ghost Rider was no ordinary target. He was a force that did not negotiate, reason, or submit. From a rooftop, Butcher leaned over the edge, binoculars trained on the fiery figure below. "He's faster than anything we've dealt with," he muttered, voice low, "and smarter. That's the scary part." Huey wiped sweat from his brow, eyes wide, while Frenchie readied a makeshift weapon designed to take advantage of the rider's one potential weakness, dimensional instability. But even then, the margin for error was razor thin. Meanwhile, Ghost Rider had descended into a narrow alley, responding to a disturbance reported by the city's surviving civilians. A soup gang, augmented with Vought's experimental biotech, had cornered a group of teenagers. Their powers ranged from super strength to short-range teleportation, all carefully calibrated by corporate engineers to intimidate and dominate. The Rider assessed the threat. 5 targets, plus civilians, in a confined space. Every instinct screamed precision, judgment, and restraint. The first attack came from the teleporting soup, vanishing and reappearing behind Ghost Rider with a metallic claw aimed at his spine. The rider's chain lashed out instinctively, snaring the attacker mid-phase. Sparks erupted as hellfire met enhanced metal, and the soup shrieked as the flames seared through synthetic muscle fibers. The others hesitated, unprepared for a combatant who could predict, react, and punish with supernatural immediacy. The alley became a theater of chaos. Ghost Rider moved fluidly, chains slicing through the air, flames coiling around attackers, flames dancing across walls, igniting trash barrels, and reflecting on wet pavement in the glow of neon signs above. Each movement demonstrated both his raw power and his tactical intelligence. No civilian was harmed, no movement wasted. Every strike sent a clear message. This world's corrupted power structures were vulnerable, and justice would come in fire.
But the soup gang was clever, coordinated, and desperate. One, a hulking brute enhanced with nano-muscle fibers, charged directly at Ghost Rider. The rider met him head-on, chains wrapping around the brute's torso and yanking him into a brick wall. The impact cracked concrete, and the brute's augmented armor splintered under the supernatural force. Yet even as he fell, the soup glared up, a mix of fear and defiance in his eyes, a hallmark of the morally gray, augmented human experience that Ghost Rider had come to understand across dimensions. As the fight unfolded, Ghost Rider sensed the presence of Vought's human assets arriving on the street above. Security operatives armed with energy-based rifles and stun grenades advanced, attempting to corral him. He paused only briefly, chains flaring higher as he intercepted incoming projectiles. Sparks ricocheted from the alley walls, and officers stumbled back under the sheer intensity of the heat and energy. Ghost Rider's presence disrupted conventional technology. It was a natural resistance born of otherworldly origin, yet he remained precise, avoiding unnecessary destruction. Above the fray, Billy Butcher and his team made their move. They slid into the alley, blending shadows with their own tactical prowess. Butcher's gaze locked on Ghost Rider, calculating potential leverage. "He's not a soup we can handle, not fully," he muttered. "But maybe we can guide him, turn that vengeance into something useful." Frenchie readied specialized equipment designed to interface with the rider's dimensional energies, hoping to subtly influence his path without direct confrontation. In the midst of the chaos, a moral choice emerged. The leader of the soup gang, cornered and pleading for mercy, offered information about a larger Vought operation, one that endangered hundreds. Ghost Rider's flames burned brighter, reflecting his internal struggle. Punish the guilty fully, or restrain himself to preserve potential lives? The decision was layered, complex, and morally ambiguous, a moment that emphasized the rider's character growth in this new morally gray universe. Ultimately, Ghost Rider chose restraint, searing the soup gang just enough to incapacitate, not kill. Flames scorched concrete and metal, leaving clear warnings etched into the environment, but he preserved innocent life. The soup leader's eyes widened with understanding and fear, recognizing the cost of corruption in a world ruled by power without accountability. As the night settled, the sound of sirens, distant helicopters, and city unrest filled the air. Ghost Rider paused, surveying the aftermath: scorched alleyways, incapacitated soups, and a city that had glimpsed the edge of vengeance incarnate. Above, Butcher nodded subtly to his team. A truce of convenience was forming, a temporary alliance born out of shared interest in pragmatic necessity. Yet even as the rider moved deeper into Manhattan, a faint ripple in the air reminded him that the portal from his home dimension was still unstable. Time was limited, and somewhere in the shadows, Vought recalculated, preparing their next move. The collision of supernatural justice and corporate corruption was only beginning.
The city was alive with whispers of fire and vengeance. News feeds buzzed with viral footage of Ghost Rider tearing through the streets, chains whipping, motorcycles burning, and soups brought low by flames that seemed to defy reality. Ordinary civilians marveled, feared, and speculated, while Vaught's top executives convened in an emergency session, eyes flicking between monitors showing chaos in real time. "Contain him before he becomes a PR nightmare," the CEO barked, voice sharp and unyielding. "Full mobilization, no hesitation. This is not a drill." From the shadows, Butcher observed, eyes narrowed. "He's not playing their game, and that's exactly why we need him, or at least to steer him a bit." He leaned closer to Huey and Frenchie, whispering, "We can't control him, but we can use the opportunity. If he goes after the right targets." His words hung in the air, heavy with implication. Ghost Rider moved with intent through Manhattan's neon arteries. His senses detected a surge of corruption emanating from a high-rise, Vaught's private research facility. Inside, a soup, recently enhanced and dangerously unstable, was conducting unauthorized experiments on civilians. The rider didn't hesitate. He smashed through the building's reinforced doors, chains lashing, hellfire flaring, and the soup barely had time to react before being ensnared and incapacitated. The cries of the captive innocents reverberated through the concrete corridors, each note a confirmation that Ghost Rider's judgment was not indiscriminate. It was precise, selective, and terrifyingly effective. Outside, Vaught's elite strike team had arrived, armed with advanced tech designed to subdue supernatural threats. Plasma rifles hummed, energy nets snapped against their restraints, and drones buzzed in formation. But Ghost Rider was already calculating, analyzing the physics, trajectory, and limitations of each device. With a flick of his flaming chain, he ripped through the leading drone, sending sparks cascading over armored operatives. He wasn't reckless. Every move was deliberate, every action a demonstration of skill, honed over battles in realms far removed from this one. The soup threat outside the building escalated. A pair of enhanced operatives attempted to flank him, firing stun rounds infused with experimental energy. Ghost Rider's chain intercepted, snapping the rounds into the ground and ricocheting shards of plasma harmlessly aside. With a twist of his wrist, he ensnared one operative by the leg, yanking him into the wall and incapacitating him without lethal harm. The other froze, realizing the futility of direct confrontation. Amid the chaos, Butcher and the boy slipped through shadows, moving toward the scene with careful precision. They observed, analyzing Ghost Rider's tactics and energy output. "He's powerful, but he leaves patterns," Frenchie noted quietly. "We could predict his next move if we act carefully." Butcher smirked. "Or we could just ride the wave and see where it leads."
Inside the facility, Ghost Rider confronted the soup scientist, an arrogant figure who had thought themselves untouchable. The chains coiled around the man's limbs, hoisting him off the floor, hellfire licking at the edges of his reinforced armor. The soup pleaded, offering secrets about Vaught's deeper operations, desperate to save their own skin. The rider paused, flames flickering as he weighed the moral calculus, annihilation for punishment or restraint for intelligence gathering. Choosing the latter, Ghost Rider demanded compliance and obedience, not destruction. The soup spilled Vought's secrets, revealing illegal experiments, civilian exploitation, and the development of unstable soup-enhancing drugs. The rider's flames dimmed slightly, a signal of restraint and control. Justice was served, information preserved, lives protected. As the confrontation ended, Ghost Rider moved to the rooftop, chains trailing like fiery serpents behind him. Manhattan sprawled below, a city forever altered by his arrival. The roar of distant sirens, the crackling of fires, and the hum of surveillance drones painted a soundtrack of chaos, tempered by order. From the shadows, Butcher nodded in approval. Not perfect, but he's effective, and if we play this right... Huey swallowed hard, sensing the danger in aligning with such an unpredictable force. Yet the opportunity was undeniable. Ghost Rider was a weapon, a symbol, and a wild card that could tip the scales in their favor, or burn everything to ash. Above, the portal flickered, a reminder of Ghost Rider's temporal limitation in this world. Every choice, every strike, every restraint mattered, not just for the city, but for his own path in a universe alien to him. The collision of vengeance, morality, and corporate corruption was far from over.
The dawn brought an uneasy calm over Manhattan. Smoke still curled from the streets where Ghost Rider had unleashed his wrath, and the city seemed to hold its breath, unsure whether the inferno had passed or merely paused. For civilians, it was a night of terror and awe. For Vought, it was an unmitigated crisis. For the boys, it was an opportunity, carefully balanced on a knife's edge. Ghost Rider had retreated to a quiet stretch of abandoned waterfront, chains coiled at his sides, motorcycle idling with a low hiss of embers. The night's work weighed on him, not in the physical sense, but in the moral calculus that guided every strike of hellfire. Innocent lives had been spared, yes, but countless questions remained. How much punishment was enough? How far could he bend the rules of this world without corrupting the judgment he carried from his own universe? From the shadows, a figure approached, Butcher, silent as ever, observing the rider with cautious calculation. "You make a mess," he said bluntly, voice carrying across the quiet docks. "But I've seen worse, and I've seen worse get fixed. You might just be... useful." Ghost Rider's fiery skull turned toward him, eyes blazing. "I do not serve your world. I serve judgment. But I am aware of the corruption festering here. It will be addressed." Butcher grunted, stepping closer. "Word is you're after soups who abuse power. That's kind of our lane too. Maybe we can align interests for a while." Huey and Frenchie emerged from the shadows, cautious yet ready, aware of the delicate balance. The discussion was interrupted by an incoming threat. Vought operatives had regrouped, deploying drones with energy disruptors and armed enhanced agents to track and neutralize the rider. Their presence transformed the waterfront into a battlefield. Ghost Rider's chains rattled, embers scattering as he readied for another confrontation. The first wave of operatives fired experimental rounds, but Ghost Rider's supernatural awareness and reflexes allowed him to intercept with precision. Chains wrapped around weapons, pulling them into the water with sparks erupting, or redirecting blasts harmlessly into the concrete pillars of the pier. He moved fluidly, every strike demonstrating mastery over his hellfire, every motion both brutal and precise. Amid the skirmish, the moral complexity of his actions became evident. Some operatives were coerced, mere humans following orders. Others were enhanced, fully aware of their actions, and yet all stood in the path of his vengeance. The rider's decisions had consequences, and he calculated them with grim clarity. Innocent life would not be sacrificed unnecessarily, but no corruption would go unchecked.
A soup, previously unseen, emerged from a shadowed warehouse, a monstrous hybrid of technology and mutation. Its arrival forced Ghost Rider to shift tactics, combining hellfire and chains in rapid succession, using the environment to his advantage. Sparks flew, wood splintered, and the water beneath the pier steamed where hellfire met cold steel and concrete. Each maneuver was measured, a deadly dance of precision and fury. Meanwhile, Butcher whispered to Huey, "Notice the pattern? He doesn't just destroy, he judges. That's something we could use. If we play it smart, he's not just a weapon, he's a tool for cleaning house." Frenchie adjusted a device designed to track Ghost Rider's dimensional energy signature, aware that the rider's presence here was temporary. As the battle reached its crescendo, Ghost Rider faced a moral crossroads. A corporate-enhanced soup threatened to leap from the pier, endangering civilians below. He could strike immediately with full hellfire, ensuring the soup's destruction, but risking innocent lives. Or he could maneuver to protect the civilians, potentially letting the soup escape. His chains arced through the air, a blur of fire and judgment as he chose the latter, saving the civilians while incapacitating the soup just enough to prevent immediate harm. The fight ended as suddenly as it began. Smoke and embers drifted over the water, bodies of incapacitated soups and operatives scattered across the pier. Ghost Rider paused, surveying the aftermath. Manhattan had witnessed his power, and the balance of fear and respect had shifted. But his time in this world was not infinite. The portal from his dimension flickered, unstable, a constant reminder that he was a visitor here. In the shadows, the boys retreated, minds buzzing with strategy. The temporary alliance, forged in necessity and observation, had solidified a precarious relationship. Ghost Rider was not theirs, nor could he be commanded, but his interests aligned, at least for now, with their own. Above, the sun began to rise over the skyline, illuminating a city forever altered by a night of hellfire, vengeance, and morally complex choices. Ghost Rider's path through Manhattan had begun to write a new narrative, a story of judgment in a world unaccustomed to consequences. The morning air was thick with smoke and the metallic tang of scorched concrete, remnants of the chaos Ghost Rider had left in his wake. Manhattan's streets were littered with debris, overturned cars, shattered glass, and the echoes of panic that still resonated through the city. For ordinary citizens, the events of the night were almost surreal, a supernatural fire demon tearing through soups and human enforcers alike. Yet for those who understood the undercurrents of power, it was a warning. Ghost Rider had arrived, and nothing in this world would remain untouched by judgment. Ghost Rider moved silently through the alleyways of Hell's Kitchen, chains trailing like serpents of fire across the wet pavement. His senses, honed from countless battles in dimensions far removed from this one, detected every heartbeat, every tremor of fear, and every flicker of intent. This world was unlike any he had encountered, a place where morality was blurred, where heroes and villains wore the same mask of convenience, and where power itself had become a commodity. Butcher had followed at a distance, observing without interference. "He's methodical," he murmured to Huey. "Not a berserker. He picks his targets, measures his strikes. That's what makes him dangerous and useful." Huey nodded, still wary, understanding the implications. Aligning with a being like Ghost Rider meant walking a razor's edge. Any misstep could turn an ally into an uncontrollable force of destruction. The rider approached a Vought-controlled nightclub, rumored to harbor a network of rogue soups engaged in illicit activities, human trafficking, black market enhancements, and experimental drug distribution. The city beneath him seemed to tense, as if aware of the impending judgment. His chain coiled, hellfire licking at the edges of his skeletal form as he prepared for confrontation. Inside, Soups moved with confidence born of immunity, unaware of the infernal force about to descend upon them. Ghost Rider breached the building with a thunderous crash, chains striking metal, flames igniting, and lights shattering. Panic erupted as enhanced humans realized their advantage had vanished. One attempted to attack with augmented claws, only to have his limbs ensnared and immobilized by hellfire-wrapped chains. The precision of the rider's attacks demonstrated a brutal elegance. No strike was wasted, yet no innocent life was imperiled.
Above the chaos, Vought deployed additional surveillance drones, some equipped with energy disruptors capable of dampening superhuman abilities, but Ghost Rider's dimensional nature rendered most attempts ineffective. Sparks flew as drones collided with chains, metal and fire intertwining in a cacophony of destruction. The rider's eyes blazed, assessing each threat, predicting movements and neutralizing dangers before they could escalate. A morally gray choice emerged when a group of innocent patrons became trapped near the conflict. Ghost Rider could have unleashed full hellfire to obliterate the rogue soups in an instant, but doing so would risk civilian casualties. Instead, he manipulated the chains and flames to create barriers, corralling the villains while providing a safe passage for innocents. Flames reflected off mirrored surfaces, creating a labyrinth of light and shadow, a tangible manifestation of the rider's control over chaos. From the rooftop, Butcher observed with keen interest. "Notice how he spares the innocents, but punishes the guilty," he whispered. "That's not just power, it's judgment, and that's a tool we could leverage." Frenchie adjusted tracking devices, mapping the flow of energy around the building, noting the rider's precision and strategy. Even in a world dominated by corporate corruption and soups, Ghost Rider's presence introduced a new variable, accountability that could not be ignored. The confrontation reached its peak when the rogue soup leader, enhanced with Vought's experimental tech, attempted to escape through the building's skylight. Ghost Rider anticipated the maneuver, chains wrapping around the soup mid-leap, dragging him back into the inferno. Sparks and embers rained down, marking the climax of judgment without excess. The city outside erupted with sirens and onlookers, but Ghost Rider's restraint ensured that the collateral damage remained minimal. As the dawn progressed, Ghost Rider retreated to the rooftop, observing the city that had witnessed his fury and restraint. Manhattan was forever changed. The rules had shifted, and a new force of judgment now walked among its streets. Below, the boys lingered in the shadows, minds racing with possibilities. The alliance, tenuous as it was, had proven effective, but the rider's unpredictability remained the ultimate variable. Every decision, every strike, every act of restraint further solidified his impact on this world, a world that would never again view power, corruption, or vengeance in the same way. The collision of morality, judgment, and supernatural force had begun in earnest. By midday, Manhattan was a city still reeling from the chaos of the previous night. Smoke drifted lazily from alleys, the scent of scorched asphalt hung in the air, and the echo of shattered glass and crumbling concrete resonated like a grim reminder of what had transpired. Ghost Rider, ever vigilant, patrolled the streets with a purpose that transcended simple vengeance. Every alley, every rooftop, every darkened corner became a stage for judgment and reckoning. His attention shifted to a particular hotspot, a Vought-operated construction site where a team of rogue soups had been experimenting with bio-augmentations on unwilling human test subjects. The experiments were grotesque, blending technology and mutation to create beings who were both monstrously powerful and dangerously unstable. Ghost Rider could feel the moral weight radiating from the site, a dark pulse that demanded intervention. The approach was silent, the roar of his motorcycle muted by a careful descent. Flames flickered along the edges of his skeletal visage, illuminating the surrounding scaffolding and casting long, sinister shadows across the steel girders. The soup team,
unaware of the rider's arrival, continued their macabre work, voices filled with arrogance and twisted curiosity. One muttered about perfecting the next generation of power, oblivious to the infernal judgment about to descend upon them. Suddenly, the first attack erupted. A hulking soup, fused with metal limbs, lunged from the scaffolding toward the rider. Chains whipped through the air with supernatural precision, wrapping around his torso and yanking him into a reinforced steel beam. Sparks flew, metal groaned, and the soup struggled, but Ghost Rider's control was absolute. With a flick of his wrist, the chains ignited in hellfire, searing synthetic muscles and immobilizing the creature. From the shadows, Butcher, Huey, and Frenchie watched closely. Butcher's eyes narrowed, calculating the potential. He doesn't just kill, he neutralizes. That's the difference between chaos and control. If we can direct that, we could clean house. Huey shivered, observing the raw intensity, while Frenchie muttered under his breath about the rider's dimensional energy patterns and how unpredictable they remained. The remaining soups responded with aggression. A pair of enhanced humans attempted a coordinated assault, firing experimental plasma projectiles, while the third tried to flank through the rooftop scaffolding. Ghost Rider's chains intercepted with surgical precision, flames coiling around limbs, deflecting energy blasts, and neutralizing the threat without collateral damage. Each movement was a demonstration of both raw power and disciplined strategy. Yet, in the midst of the battle, a moral dilemma emerged. One of the soups, previously coerced into compliance, hesitated, hands raised, begging for mercy. Ghost Rider's eyes blazed, chains poised to strike. Could he punish the guilty while sparing the unwilling? The answer came in a controlled burst of hellfire, precise, calculated, non-lethal, incapacitating the hesitant soup while allowing life to continue. The choice reinforced his role as a judge, not just an executioner. Meanwhile, Vought's surveillance network detected the conflict. An alert blared in a command center as executives realized their experimental assets were being neutralized by a being they could neither predict nor control. "Deploy all units. Use containment field Alpha," one technician shouted, fingers flying over holographic controls. But Ghost Rider's presence disrupted the energy fields, chains intercepting electrical discharges, flames reflecting off reinforced metal, and drones collapsing under supernatural interference. The climax of the confrontation arrived when the soup leader, augmented with unstable biotech, attempted to detonate a volatile experimental device, risking mass civilian casualties. Ghost Rider reacted instantly, chains erupting in a coil of hellfire, intercepting the soup mid-leap and severing access to the device. Sparks and embers rained over the site, steel beams groaning, and yet the civilians outside were unharmed. Judgment had been delivered, catastrophe averted. As the dust settled, Ghost Rider arose above the scaffolding, motorcycle idling, flames flickering in the morning sun. Manhattan below had been changed irrevocably. The city had witnessed supernatural justice, precise and morally complex, and a new balance of fear and respect had been established. But the portal flickered, a reminder of temporal limitation. Ghost Rider's presence was finite, yet his impact was indelible. From the shadows, the boys retreated, minds racing with strategy and opportunity. The collision of supernatural vengeance and human corruption had only escalated.
By late afternoon, the streets of Manhattan were a tense chessboard of fear, observation, and anticipation. Word had spread via social media, emergency alerts, and frightened whispers that a fiery skeletal figure had descended upon the city, delivering judgment upon rogue soups and corrupt humans alike. Ghost Rider moved with deliberate focus, his chain rattling in rhythm with the pounding of distant sirens, the hum of hovering drones, and the faint cries of civilians still shaken by the day's events. A new target emerged, a high-rise owned by a Vought subsidiary, rumored to be housing a clandestine laboratory where experimental soups were being enhanced for violent, public operations. The building was heavily guarded by both human security and augmented soups, including one whose powers allowed him to generate a magnetic field strong enough to disrupt conventional electronics. Ghost Rider's chain shivered with hellfire as he assessed the layout from a rooftop, calculating the approach. The initial infiltration was silent, precise. Flames from his skull flickered along the edge of his leather jacket, reflecting off glass and steel, creating an eerie glow that warned of impending judgment. Ghost Rider dropped into a side entrance, chains lashing silently, immobilizing guards before alarms could sound. His movements were a mix of supernatural grace and methodical strategy, each action demonstrating mastery over both his powers and the environment. Within the laboratory, Soups experimented on unwilling human subjects, their arrogance and moral detachment evident. One attempted to attack with enhanced claws, but Ghost Rider's chain intercepted mid-air, igniting in hellfire and searing the Soup's augmented limb without harming the captive. Sparks reflected off glass containers, chemicals hissed where they met flames, and the air became thick with the acrid scent of ozone, smoke, and burning synthetic material. Outside, Vaught's security had activated experimental countermeasures. Drones equipped with electromagnetic pulses attempted to neutralize Ghost Rider's chains, while operatives armed with reinforced rifles moved into the building's perimeter. But Ghost Rider anticipated their approach. Chains snapped, flames coiling in arcs to intercept projectiles, sending sparks ricocheting into walls, floors, and ceilings. The environment itself became an ally, each movement reinforcing both offense and defense.
A morally complex choice arose when one enhanced Soup, forced to participate in the experiments, hesitated to attack civilians outside. Ghost Rider's eyes burned brighter as he weighed the option: punish all indiscriminately or discern the unwilling from the complicit. With a precise surge of hellfire, he incapacitated the Soup non-lethally, signaling a judgment that balanced vengeance with restraint. This act reinforced his role not just as executioner, but as arbiter of moral consequence. The final confrontation came as the Soup leader attempted to detonate an experimental device designed to amplify superhuman abilities across the city. Ghost Rider acted instantly, chains lashing, flames erupting, and the device neutralized mid-explosion. Steel girders warped, lab equipment shattered, but civilians remained untouched. Every action was deliberate, every strike measured, every outcome intentional. Judgment had been served. From above, Butcher and the boys watched, understanding that their tentative alliance had shifted the city's balance. Ghost Rider's intervention had revealed the extent of Vaught's corruption and the weaknesses in their carefully controlled empire. Frenchie monitored the rider's dimensional energy signature, noting fluctuations that hinted at the limits of his stay. Huey whispered to Butcher, "We've never seen anything like this. He's more than just a weapon. He's a force of nature." As the sun dipped toward the horizon, Ghost Rider paused atop the high-rise, chains coiled, motorcycle idling. Manhattan below was transformed, a city aware that unchecked power came at a cost, that morality, even in a corrupt world, could still be enforced. The rider's judgment had begun, and the consequences would ripple through the city, through Vaught's operations, and through the hearts of both the guilty and the innocent.
Night returned to Manhattan like a curtain falling over a battlefield that had never truly cooled. Fires still smoldered in distant districts, emergency lights painted buildings in red and blue pulses, and the air carried the lingering scent of ash and melted metal. But beneath the surface chaos, something far more dangerous had begun to unfold. Vought had stopped reacting. Now they were hunting.
Deep within a secured underground facility, executives and scientists watched holographic projections of Ghost Rider's battles from the past 24 hours. Energy readings fluctuated wildly across the charts, but one conclusion was undeniable: conventional suppression would not work. "Then we escalate," one executive said coldly. "Release Project Dominion." The decision would reshape the night. Ghost Rider sensed the shift before it manifested physically. His supernatural awareness prickled like heat lightning across his consciousness, a distortion in the moral and energetic fabric of the city. Something powerful had been unleashed, something born of human arrogance and scientific desperation. He stood atop a cathedral spire overlooking Manhattan, flames flickering brighter against the dark sky. Wind howled past him, carrying distant sirens and the rhythmic thrum of helicopters. His chain rattled slowly, responding to his focus. Then the sky cracked with thunder. A shockwave erupted several blocks away, glass shattered, cars flipped, and a massive figure stepped from the debris. Project Dominion. The creature was enormous, easily 15 feet tall, its body a grotesque fusion of multiple soup DNA strains, cybernetic reinforcement, and unstable compound enhancements. Veins glowed with artificial energy, metal plating fused into muscle tissue, and its eyes burned with an unstable electric blue light. It wasn't just strong, it was engineered to counter superhuman threats, including Ghost Rider. From the shadows nearby, Butcher swore under his breath. "Bloody hell, they built a bloody kaiju!" Huey's voice trembled. Can he handle that?" Butcher didn't answer immediately. His eyes remained locked on the approaching Titan. If anyone can, it's him. The creature roared, a sound that shook buildings, and charged. Asphalt shattered under its weight. Ghost Rider didn't retreat. His motorcycle ignited beneath him, wheels blazing with hellfire as he launched forward down the cathedral wall, defying gravity. Flames streaked behind him like a comet tail. The collision between supernatural vengeance and engineered monstrosity was inevitable. The first impact was catastrophic. Dominion swung a massive arm reinforced with alloy plating. Ghost Rider leapt from his bike mid-motion, chain whipping outward. Hellfire wrapped around the creature's arm, stopping the strike inches from his skull. The heat melted metal instantly, but Dominion barely reacted, its regeneration systems compensating. Interesting. A worthy opponent. Ghost Rider landed atop the creature's shoulder, flames intensifying as he drove his chain into its neck joint. Sparks exploded. The monster roared and slammed itself backward into a skyscraper wall, crushing concrete and steel. The impact cratered the building facade, but Ghost Rider held firm, boots anchored by supernatural force. Below, civilians fled in waves, police barricades collapsed, news helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting the fight live across the world. This was no longer a hidden battle. It was global spectacle. Dominion adapted quickly. Its body emitted a pulse, an electromagnetic shockwave mixed with experimental energy designed to disrupt supernatural frequencies. Ghost Rider staggered for the first time since arriving in this universe. His flames flickered briefly, destabilized by the dimensional interference. Not weakened significantly, but affected. The creature seized the opportunity, grabbing him and hurling him across the street. Ghost Rider smashed through 3 parked cars in a storefront, debris exploding around him. Flames erupted again as he rose instantly, chains spinning defensively. Power loss? Minimal. Threat level? Significant. Ghost Rider revved his motorcycle, launching forward again, this time faster. He circled Dominion in a blazing arc, chains striking repeatedly at joints and weak points. Each blow melted armor, severed cybernetic connections, and slowed the creature's movements. But Dominion was learning. It slammed its fists into the ground, sending a seismic shockwave outward. Pavement cracked like ice, buildings trembled, civilians screamed. Ghost Rider faced a critical moral decision. He could unleash maximum hellfire, enough to obliterate Dominion instantly, but the blast radius would devastate several city blocks. Thousands could die. Instead, he chose restraint, precision over annihilation. The rider accelerated vertically up a skyscraper, then launched himself downward with supernatural force, chain extended like a spear of fire. He struck Dominion directly in the chest, targeting the central power core glowing beneath its rib plating. The impact detonated in a pillar of flame. Dominion staggered, systems failing. The creature roared in agony and rage, attempting one final attack, charging toward a crowded evacuation route. Ghost Rider reacted instantly. His chain expanded into multiple flaming coils, wrapping Dominion's legs and torso, halting its momentum inches before it reached civilians. Asphalt melted under the strain. The rider planted his boots, muscles of supernatural energy straining as he held the monster back through sheer will and hellfire. Then he spoke. "Your sins are not your own." For the first time, Ghost Rider hesitated. Dominion wasn't truly guilty. It was created, weaponized, used. The true sin belonged to Vought. So he delivered judgment differently. Hellfire surged, not to destroy, but to purge. The flames burned through Dominion's cybernetic control systems, severing the corporate override protocols embedded in its brain. The creature collapsed, unconscious rather than dead. A living indictment. Proof. Above, Butcher stared in stunned silence. "He didn't kill it," Huey whispered. Butcher's jaw tightened. "No," he said quietly. "He's sending a message." Sirens approached, helicopters swarmed, news cameras captured everything.
Ghost Rider stood amid the burning street, chains coiled, flames roaring brighter than ever. The war had reached its climax, and Vought had just been challenged publicly for the first time by something they could neither control nor spin.
The city trembled in the aftermath of Dominion's Sakut. Manhattan looked like a war zone. Entire streets were fractured, cars overturned like discarded toys, and smoke rose in thick columns toward the night sky. Emergency sirens wailed endlessly. Helicopters circled with searchlights cutting through drifting ash, and crowds of civilians stood at barricades in stunned silence, watching the impossible unfold before their eyes. At the center of it all stood Ghost Rider. Flames curled around his skeletal form, illuminating the unconscious bulk of Dominion sprawled across shattered asphalt. The monster that Vought had engineered to dominate every threat had been defeated, not destroyed, but neutralized, and that distinction mattered more than anyone yet realized, because Ghost Rider had made a statement. Judgment was not mindless vengeance. Judgment was choice. Across the street, Butcher and the boys emerged from the shadows cautiously. Even Butcher, a man who rarely showed hesitation, approached with visible respect. "Well," Butcher muttered, glancing at Dominion, "that's one hell of a mess you made." Ghost Rider turned his burning gaze toward him. "This creature is not the sinner," the rider said, voice echoing with supernatural resonance. "The sin lies with those who created it." Huey swallowed hard. "You mean Vought?" The rider said nothing. He didn't need to. Spotlights suddenly flooded the area. Military vehicles screeched to a halt, armed operatives pouring out with experimental weaponry. High above, a sleek corporate helicopter descended slowly. Vought had arrived personally. The side door opened. A senior executive stepped out, flanked by elite supes, polished, smiling, media-ready faces hiding lethal capability. Cameras followed close behind, broadcasting live. Damage control mode. The executive raised a megaphone.
"Citizens of New York," he announced smoothly, "Vought International has successfully contained a dangerous extraterrestrial threat." The chain moved before he finished speaking.
Ghost Rider's flaming chain snapped across the pavement, stopping inches from the man's feet. Concrete exploded outward from the impact. The executive froze mid-sentence. Cameras captured everything. The rider stepped forward slowly. "You profit from suffering," he said. The executive's smile faltered. Soups around him tensed, preparing for combat. For a moment, the entire city seemed to hold its breath. Ghost Rider could end them. All of them. Executives, Soups, soldiers. One catastrophic release of hellfire would erase the corruption at its source. But it would also kill innocents, employees, bystanders, manipulated heroes who were not entirely guilty. The ultimate moral decision. Total vengeance or imperfect justice. Flames intensified around his skull, roaring like a furnace. The ground beneath his boots cracked from the heat. Even Butcher instinctively stepped back. Then, slowly, the flames receded. Ghost Rider lowered his chain. "Your judgment will come," he said, "but not tonight." The words were more terrifying than any attack, because they promised inevitability. Above them, the sky rippled. The dimensional portal. It had returned. A swirling fracture of orange fire and black void opened above the skyline, lightning-like tendril stretching across the clouds. The rider looked up, sensing the pull of his home dimension. His time here was ending. Butcher stepped forward. "So, that's it then? You just ride off into the flaming sunset?" Ghost Rider mounted his motorcycle. Flames ignited along the wheels instantly. "This world now knows judgment exists," he replied. "That is enough." Huey spoke quietly. "Will we ever see you again?" The rider paused. "When sin calls loud enough, I return." With that, the motorcycle roared forward, racing up the side of a skyscraper in a vertical wall of fire. He launched into the air, directly into the portal, disappearing in a burst of blazing light. The sky sealed behind him. Silence fell. For several seconds, no one spoke. Then the city erupted into noise. Sirens, helicopters, shouting crowds, reporters screaming into microphones. The world had changed. Ghost Rider had come and gone. But his impact remained. Ghost Rider's arrival in the boys' universe left a scar that could never be erased. For the first time, Vought faced an opponent that could not be bribed, controlled, marketed, or destroyed through conventional means. Dominion's defeat exposed the corporation's darkest secrets to the world, shattering the illusion of total authority they had cultivated for decades. Billy Butcher and the boys gained something even more valuable than a temporary ally. They gained proof that Soups were not invincible. That power, no matter how overwhelming, could be judged, could be held accountable. For civilians, Ghost Rider became myth overnight. Some called him a demon, others called him a savior. Many simply called him justice. Vought, however, called him a threat, and corporations do not forget threats. In his own dimension, Ghost Rider carried the memory of this world with him, a place where sin wore corporate suits and hero capes alike. He had chosen restraint rather than annihilation, proving that vengeance without wisdom was merely destruction. Judgment required balance. But the portal between worlds had opened once. It could open again. Somewhere in Manhattan, buried beneath corporate cleanup operations and media spin, fragments of hellfire still burned in cracks along the pavement. A reminder, a warning. Because if corruption rose again, if innocent blood cried out loud enough, the spirit of vengeance would return. And next time, he might not choose restraint.